Hello, everyone, and welcome to P. Cloudy's webinar, Uncover the Hidden Bugs Eating Your Revenue with Visual AI. My name is Dinakar, and I'll be the host for today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping rules. Your line is currently muted. However, you can submit your questions during the webinar through the chat option at the bottom of the screen. We will answer your questions as part of the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and we will send the link of the recording to share with your colleagues later. With that said, let me introduce the speaker for today, Shoaib Ahmed. Shoaib is a lead pre-sales consultant at pCloudy. He has around 10 plus years of experience in the IT industry. Prior to his role at pCloudy, he worked with Micro Focus as a pre-sales consultant for application delivery management portfolio. He has catered to technologies such as Devops, automation, performance, cloud, and mobility. Without further ado, let me hand it over to the speaker, Shoaib Ahmed. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dinakar. Thanks everyone for joining here. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for people joining across different part of the world. Yeah, my name is Shoaib Ahmed, and I'm a technical pre-sales consultant here at pCloudy. So today we will be running through this webinar on the visual AI, right? So uncovering the hidden bugs eating your revenue with visual AI. That's the subject. And yeah, during the course of the webinar, as the in case if you guys have any queries, you just put that in the chat. We will take up your queries during the Q&A session. All right. So without further ado, let me just get started with the today's agenda. So we'll start with a quick overview on what pCloudy is. So this will help understand the audience about our platform, the capabilities and features that we bring in. And then we'll quickly jump into the visual testing, right? So we'll look into what visual testing is and some of its importance. And we will also look at some of the challenges with the manual visual testing. And we will try to focus our time towards understanding the role of the AI, right, when it comes to visual testing, and also what is the role of automation in case of visual testing. And then we will have a quick look at the demo where I will be showcasing the live demonstration of the visual testing incorporated within our existing automation frameworks, right? How we can identify the bugs with the help of pCloudy's AI plugin that we have built. And then we will look into the Q&A. If there are any queries, we will take up at the last. So that's the agenda. With that, let me just talk about what pCloudy is. So pCloudy is basically it's a continuous testing cloud platform which provides real devices across Android and iOS platform with different manufacturers, make and model, different OS versions. So where you can test all your different types of applications, be it native, hybrid, progressive web apps, and mobile web apps. And not just that, we also have a browser lab where you can test all your web-based applications. Right, so from along with the features and capabilities that pCloudy brings in for both manual and as well as automation testing. Right, so that's about pCloudy. And when we talk about offerings, there are various different offerings. We have public cloud for small scale industries, which is basically a shareable platform wherein you have more than 350 plus physical devices hosted across different data centers in India, in US, in Singapore. And also when it comes to dedicated instances, we have private and on-premise. So these are the dedicated clouds. Depending on the requirement, we will host the clouds for you, right? And these are enterprise grade data centers, what we have. So with that, if you could see on the bottom of the screen, there are six pillars, right, which we cater. Right, so device lab, which is something where we provide the infrastructure, the mobile devices with both Android and as well as iOS. So pretty much scalable platform where you can scale up the devices for your testing needs, be it for manual testing or automation testing. And not just that, we also have integration with all the leading CI servers. So that will be covered as part of DevOps. And as I said, pCloudy is a one-stop shop for all your mobile and as well as web-based application testing needs. So we have a section where you can test all your browser applications on a different Mac and Windows machine, different OSs, different browsers. So you can pretty much test the compatibility of different browsers of your applications. So that's with the help of Browser Lab. And when we talk about automation, so we have our inbuilt own automation tool called Opkey, where we're talking about creating the scripts, right? Creating the script is something which is very important. So we can create the scripts very quickly. So that's our in-house built Opkey tool, which is a codeless form of automation. So anyone can create the scripts while they are recording. So it has a record and playback feature, which helps you record the entire flow and thereby integrating this with pCloudy. So we have tightly integrated this with pCloudy. So that's about our in-house Opkey tool. Of course, that's a licensed version. And when we talk about the automation, execution at scale, so as I said, so we have integration with all the leading open source solutions, be it APM, XCTest, or Espresso. You can pretty much integrate your existing APM framework with pCloudy and also execute your automation scripts on number of devices, multiple at the same time, right? Thereby achieving the parallel execution, and thus helps you in achieving the parallel execution and saving the test execution time. And when we talk about analytics, which is a very crucial part, which helps us understand the findings across the testing we have done, be it for manual testing or automation testing. So we provide a comprehensive report which helps understand the findings that you have done the test, be it for manual and automation, when it comes to all the performance metrics, starting from the battery performance to CPU usage and also the memory consumption of your application. All these are pretty much captured as part of reports, along with the screenshots and videos and logs. So we provide you the comprehensive report as part of test analytics, and also with advanced progressive report, which helps you in detailed understanding of your report in terms of understanding at the test case level, right? So any number of test cases that are passed, number of test cases that are failed, so all that are pretty much captured as part of test analytics, and also has an option of easily sharing the reports among your different team members, different stakeholders, or different leadership team, right? So that's on the analytics part. And when we say DevOps, so our tool is capable enough of integrating with all the leading CI servers, be it Jenkins, TeamCity, Bamboo, Azure DevOps, and so on. So we can pretty much quickly integrate. If there are any builds that you're running through CI servers, you can pretty much integrate with our pCloudy platform and then trigger your build through the CI servers. So it's a comprehensive solution and also an one-stop shop for all your mobile and as well as web application testing. So that's about us. And when we talk about on the Gartner listing, so pCloudy was listed as an example of technology in the Gartner in the 2020 report for how to build an effective remote testing competencies. So we have been tested by Gartner and also G2 Crowd, where we have hundreds of customers across the globe and also among the Fortune 500 companies across different verticals, from insurance to banking, telecommunications, media, e-commerce, and so on, right? So that's about us. And now let's try and focus on what visual testing is, right? So when we talk about visual testing, if we try to understand, this is called as a UI interface as well, visual UI or UI interface testing. So it's a process wherein the user, the tester, or the developer test the app to check if the visual elements on the app's UI appear accurately on the screen, right? So it's more to do with the UI validation rather than the functional behavior. So it's completely different than the functional behavior. So it's very important to understand what visual testing is, right? So I'm sure many of us such in are already doing the visual testing, right, either through manually or through automation. So we need to understand the importance of visual testing and how we can capture the bugs earlier, even if even the application is released to the production. Right. So and also in other words, if you put this visual testing in terms of it's more of like catching the visual bugs, right, that appear on the screen of the page. And as I said, so these are completely different than the functional bugs. So it's more of a UI based elements. So you try to compare your screens from the visual point and try to understand if the screen is appearing as expected. And now when we talk about visual testing in case of development or even in the QA, right, what does it mean, right? So now if we try to understand, so visual testing is something which is required, right, whenever an app with an UI, visual UI basically is developed. So in today's world, where the front-end developers are more reliant on the HTML and also the CSS to develop the pages, and with the concept of just write once and run anywhere model. So that's where the front-end developers are more reliant on. So in such cases, the quality of the pages maybe the appear to be expected, and falls on the UI. So there is a huge quality dependent, right, and it pretty much falls on the QA. So there are tons of browsers which has to be tested on different operating system, different screen sizes, so that you'll all need to check the pages, right? So visual testing becomes quite a tedious task in such cases, and we have to comply with all the standards, even before the application is getting released. So there is a huge pressure on the QA from these aspects now. So if you try to understand this, I'm sure you would understand how important it is to test your, the applications or the web pages or even the mobile applications when it comes to visual integrity. So let's try and understand the importance of visual testing, right? So despite all the efforts in the developing the app and also running several tests for compatibility or usability or even from functional part, right? So we are not never too sure how it will pan out visually on various different screens and devices, right? So for example, if you look at this picture, right, what does it talk about? So there are two different screens. So we can see, there's a sample sign up page that has been rendered on the Chrome and the Firefox. So you clearly see that the logo here, right, is not in place in case of Mozilla Firefox. So there is a little distortion that has happened on the logo, and also when we talk about the login button, is also hidden by the information, the help information that is coming here. So though the application is it's the same application, but when it is tested on a different browser, it all seems to be appearing differently altogether, right? When it is tested on a different browser. So how are we going to cater such visual bugs? We cannot release the application without having these bugs tested. So it's really important to test against these different parameters and understand how visual testing can help. So how does it help in a broad way, right? When we talk about visual testing, so when you have an approach of visual testing within your testing approach, so how is it going to help, right? So visual testing basically helps curtails more frequent losses or hefty losses that are caused by unchecked visual errors. So there can be numerous errors if we are releasing the application without checking the visual errors, right? The functional behavior is different here, but when it comes to visual testing, this is something which has to be validated thoroughly. So with the proper visual testing and tool in place, we can make sure the huge losses that would be encountered either through the resources or even through the time that can be very much minimized. And then this also helps in having a very elegant user experience, right, when it comes to the UI and the UX design. So that will eventually lead to app success. Every organization will prefer to have a better UX experience. Now, UX experience is something where every user is looking for. There are hundreds and thousands of apps already in the production, right? So if we do not meet the user experience in today's world, right, the dissatisfaction from the users will be high, and there won't be any usage of the application. The application will just be abandoned, all right, and eventually which will impact the business, right? So it's really important that we test all such scenarios, which includes the UI, which makes the UI better, right, with the help of visual testing. And yeah, this will help any visual testing bugs being even before they get released to the production. We can easily get catch hold of them in the while we are testing the application. So visual testing can be started very soon, right, even after the unit and the integration testing is done. So we can very well start the visual testing once the UI of the screen is developed, all right, so that there are very minimal defects before it is gone to the production, and we can uh, completely minimize all the UI issues in the user acceptance testing. So that will also help in a larger way. And it also ensures the rendering of the UI, right, on different devices, like we saw in the previous screen, where the sample login page used to appear differently on a different browser. Similarly, when we test it on a different devices, right, when you're testing an application in a tab versus on a normal mobile device one, how it will behave, right? What is the difference, right? So if you do not have a proper UI, if there is any rendering of the screens of the UI that is different from one device to device, then again it pretty much hampers and it will lead to more dissatisfaction from the users, right? So this will also ensure the getting the any UI rendering screen issues. And of course it also checks for the responsive any design errors. If there are any specific design errors on the screen, you can pretty much catch hold of them, right? It's not just only the visual elements, but also various different texts. If there are any text issues related to through the OCR, you can pretty much identify all the text that is appearing. If there is something different on a different build. So you have, for example, you have two different builds, right? On an older build, you seem to see have everything very much in place, along with the UI, different elements, all the text appearing to be very stable. But once there is a new once new version is released, you could probably see some differences. And if you want to identify quickly how you can easily identify those, so those can be done. So visual testing is very important in every aspect. And when we talk about the differences, it is, I mean, pretty straightforward, as I mentioned. So visual testing, so this is more of a, the test will be conducted based on the visual correctness, not based on the functional behavior. So functional testing is something where you test the software behavior, correct? And based on the use cases that has been written. And also when we talk about visual testing, so it's more of visual elements that we will try to match with the desired UI design. And whereas in functional test, this is more of the input should match with the desired output. All right. So that's one of the typical differences when you talk about visual functional testing. And visual testings are pretty much not non-judgmental. You cannot judge based on the pass or fail scenarios. So it is pretty much on the UI screen where whether the elements are appearing properly as expected or not. Whereas in case of functional testing, it is pretty much judgmental testing, where whether if it's a failed or a pass scenario. So you test a flow and you see the behavior of an particular functionality, and you see if the functionality is working fine or not, right? And you judge accordingly, right? Whether if it's a passed or a failed scenario. Right? So that's the differences of visual testing versus functional testing. And few will try and understand what are the challenges we've been facing through manual visual testing. Right, human error. Of course, we cannot test everything just with the manual testing, right? So there could be a human error where we cannot identify few things which where the tool can do. Correct. It might require a huge amount of time in case if you want to thoroughly inspect the the screen to screen. So there is a lot of effort. Plus, there is always a chance of human errors. So that is pretty much there. And as I said, it's very, very, very time consuming. You cannot really sit and start comparing the screens from one screen to another screen. Every applications might have tens and 15s of screens, right, on per functionality. So in order to test each of the images, each of the screens, it is very much time consuming. And as a visual elements on multiple pages, so it also becomes a challenge. And then also screen orientation, which is very important. So this is also one of the challenges, and challenges around multiple screen configurations. So different screen configurations on a different devices. So it becomes really challenging. You cannot really try and see and understand how the application uh, is behaving if the UI appears on a different screen configurations when we have it. And of course, on different multiple browsers, OS device combination, there is always the effort that is required. You cannot really test it manually on each of the browsers, each of the OS versions, or each of the device combination. So there are these are some of the highly challenges that we've seen when it comes to manual testing for the visual contract. Now let's take a look and try and understand how the AI, the artificial intelligence and automation testing helps us in visual testing. So this has been a trend now, which most of the organization are preferring, right? So imagine, testing visually manually, as we saw in the previous slide, could take hours and hours also on the human effort, right? But with the AI technology in place, and also by using automation, we can pretty much reduce the effort here and also the time to help understand the visual concepts and also the visual elements, identify the visual bugs very easily on multiple combinations of browsers, devices, screen sizes, and even OSs. Right, so it's very straightforward. So let's take a look some of the examples of or the roles of the AI. All right, so when we talk about these different roles, so when we talk about the automation comparison process, so it is very straightforward. It automates the comparison process, so where you don't have to worry about comparing. So you just write a piece of a script, add the line of a code which is required, and it automatically compares the screens with different application builds. All right, and thereby the process is very smooth. It is completely automated. And also the AI algorithm which we have is based over the pixel based comparison. So it tries to compare with the pixel based, right, rather than the visual elements that we see. And all the objects are identified based on the pixel, and it also works very well with the dynamic changes. So if there are any dynamic changes on the applications, of course dynamic changes are want to have, right, on every application. As soon as there are any changes that has been applied and developed on the application, so dynamic changes are very much in place. All right, so in order to identify those dynamic changes, the role of AI becomes very effective, and also with the automation. And the identifying the accuracy would be very higher. All right, so you can very easily identify the elements, the visual elements, right? Be it a very small, even from a checkbox to very minimal, which could be avoided when you're doing through the manual testing. So the chances of uh, the visual bugs getting escaped are very very minimal here with the UI, with the role of AI and automation in visual testing. And thereby it accelerates your complete validation process, right, which eventually helps you in releasing the app to the production very fast, and thereby having a very good rated app. All right, every organization tends to have their app to be rated among the top, right? So these are some of the roles of AI in the automation that are required. And you can also integrate this with your existing APM frameworks. All right, so with a small piece of a code, you can easily integrate and then execute your scripts very easily. And so pCloud is visual AI, right? So as I said, pCloud has come up with your visual UI feature, which helps you test all your visual elements on the fly by using the AI concept, and also it can also integrate with your existing automation solutions, be it APM, Selenium, XUI test, or Expresso. And so it is very simple. You need not worry much about writing the codes which are complex. So no, so the codes are very simple. You just have to add it within your existing script. That makes your life easier. And these are just a few line of codes that is required to add in your existing code. And this accurately checks the app UI when rendering across different multiple devices, OSs, browser combinations. So you can pretty much do it at a very faster pace. And it can, as I said, it can be easily integrated with your existing automation framework, right? So this pCloud is a visual AI plugin. Also makes your visual testing very smart and very easy, simple. And the plugin which we have also helps you compare the screenshots with the baseline image, and to spot if there are any differences very instantly. And it also checks for the accuracy of the app's UI, correct? So when rendering across different devices, and it also compares the graphics on the screen along with the text, and or maybe it could be the icons as well. All right, and so to the minute test of details. So all these features not only make your visual testing effortless, but also provide you a sigh of relief. So when it comes to enabling this on your favorite automation tools, right? So we can see it in live, how the code can be integrated with existing framework, and execute a sample script and see how the AI and the visual pCloud's visual AI helps you in identifying or spotting the differences of different screens on the different devices, on different OSs combination. Right. So we will look into that. Let's see it in live. Right. I'll quickly jump into the demo. Now let me just switch. All right, so I'm using Eclipse IDE here as an APM client. You can pretty much use your own IDEs, be it Android Studio or Visual Studio. And the script which we have is based on TestNG framework, right? As pCloud, as APM is a framework agnostic, you can pretty much use your own frameworks depending on your skill sets and the resources that you have. And this is the sample script, and we will upload this on our GitHub location as well in case if you wish to refer them. So the three different parts to it, I will touch base around them. So there is a first method, is a before method, where we are initializing the driver, whether if it's an Android or iOS, and this is the endpoint URL where the APM server is hosted. And these are the capabilities based, right? So it's just that I need the 6 line of code for me to in order to integrate with my existing script, right? So if you look at these capabilities, so these are nothing but username, API key, followed by the application which you are executing it, and then the device, on which specific device you are trying to execute. All right, and some additional capabilities which you can add, right? And the second part of the test is to write the actual test cases. So we have a sample application where we are trying to see if there are any differences in the images, right, between two different builds. All right, so we'll try and take one example of one of the application where I have two builds. In my first build, I am taking some base images, right? So the prerequisite to execute and apply the AI's visual UI is you need to have a baseline image, correct? So which is nothing but which is basically which we are trying to compare with our current build. Okay, so I have placed this in this different location, correct? So these are my base images which I'm trying to compare with my existing, and there is also a connector which is required, which pcloudy will be providing, which you will be adding within your libraries, right? So once you have added provider auth token, where we are authenticating with the user details here. So these are my pcloudy's user details, and as I said, these are the base images where we are trying to upload, correct? So I'm trying to place this in my repository. This is image 1 and image 2, correct? So these are the two images which I am comparing with my new build, which I have recently released. Recently have them, and also I'm printing them as a base image ID 1, correct? And also we are, once that is done, and here we are getting that image ID, correct? This will actually get the image ID which we have got, and it will actually capture the screenshot, correct? And once that is there, we are also using the hash map functions, which helps, which is used for mapping the keys with functions. And these are the parameters. I'm passing them as a parameter base image ID, and so it tries to compare it with the base image, and this is the actual image which I am trying to execute now. And this is the driver.execute script API, right? So this is the API which helps me give the difference image, right? It tries to compare with the image base image ID with accept image ID, and this gives you the difference in image. If there is any distortion in the screen, or if there is any changes in the visual screen, we will see that. So intentionally what we have done is we have made some changes on the base images, all right, and we are trying to see if there is any difference, whether if this feature, if this capability is capable enough giving me the differential image. Okay, and I'm placing that in a different location altogether. Okay, so that's how it is. And yeah, it's just trying to get the elements pass of a particular action that I'm being performing on both the sides. Similarly, this is for the second image, right? Base image and base image ID1. So as I said, we have two different images. So these two images will be compared with two different new images, and I will get two different images altogether, right? So these are some of the piece of information that you will be adding it within your existing code, and you can configure your own way, right? And yeah, so that's it. And last method is the author method, where we are putting the driver. All right, so once I have all these parameters and everything in place, I can execute the script. So before that, I'll just quickly check if this particular device is available. I'm executing this on Samsung Galaxy M40. So I'll go to the platform. So device.pcloudy.com is the cloud URL where the user can access. So it's a public cloud, where is different devices, as you can see. I can quickly look for Galaxy M40 and see if this device is available. Yeah, this device is available. Now I can just try and execute. So before that, let me also go to the folder where we have the baseline images. So this is my folder where I have placed the images here, right? So these are two of my images. So we have intentionally done some changes on the screen, right? So that whether the script is capable of identifying this with an actual image. And also on this screen, we have tried to intentionally remove some elements, some text on the screen. All right. So these are my baseline images. Differential images, we will get it once we execute the script. If I just show you the screenshots, these are my previous screenshots. So this is what we have done. What's new is something which we have intentionally made a mark on this screen, and whether if we try and see if it's really capturing or not. All right, so that's my prerequisite. I have to place my base images in the base image folder, and yeah, I can just try and execute this. Let me execute, go to run as, click on test ng. So once I trigger, the execution will get started. Yeah, here's the IDs that is getting printed. At the same time, I can go back to the platform. Just if I want to see the live view, what's really happening, right? I can just go to my active session and can start seeing the session as well. At the same time, I can monitor the console. So this is actually trying to print the image ID here. Yeah, the device is connected. Let me just connect to the device. Live view is optional. The execution will still happen at the backend, but in case while you're debugging, if you want to make sure the app is getting launched and the execution is happening, you can go to the live view and see. And meanwhile, at the same time, you can monitor your execution as well. Yeah, as you see, the APM client is just getting set up on this device, and now the execution will proceed further. The application will get installed, and it will try to capture the images. So now here it has uh, it's these are the image ID, right? Both the image IDs we have got, the one which we have uploaded. Right now you see the application, the driver has been initiated, and this is my new build what I have. So yeah, driver got initiated, and you can see it has given the screenshot and it's placed in this location. So first scenario is passed. Now the second screen, yeah, it got pretty much got executed without any issues. Now if I go and see here, right, both the scenarios are pretty much passed. So these are my image IDs, and the driver got initiated, and then it captured the screenshot. It compared and captured the screenshot and gave me another image ID here, and the differential image is placed here. So as you can see the scenarios. All right, so now it is completed. So now in order to validate now whether if I got any differential images, I'll go back to the folder here. In the difference image, I should see the difference image here, right? Yeah, here is the difference image. You see here, right? So it tried transporting the differences with the base image with the current one. And as I said, we intentionally highlighted or removed one specific the context from the image, right? And it is clearly highlighting here. And even if you closely see, it is even highlighting the duration, the time and the duration of it, right? So it's trying to spot here. This is one screen, and the other screen is the privacy policy. All right, so it got easily highlighted. Yeah, I can just show you my base images so that you will understand. Right, this is the one which I have made some changes on the screen, and it identified, it gave me an image very easily. And on the second screen, the privacy policy. Right, let me show you the difference images. Yeah, and the privacy policy. Right, so that's how it works. Very smooth, very elegant. I did not have bother much about identifying the elements. It was very smooth. So if there are any new builds, and if you really want to compare with your existing build, you can just make sure that you place your screenshots as part of your base images on your base image folder, and then you compare it while you are executing your script. So this will help you quickly give the difference image. So that will help you understand the differential image and quickly spot the differences, and thereby identifying the visual bugs very quickly, right? So this is one such example. You can further configure with your own ways, with your own scenarios, and help identifying. So we have also released a complete documentation for it, which will help you understand in detail. And not just that, we can also verify the text, correct? So image comparison is just one such example. Also, if you want to verify the text on a screen, on a particular screen, you can pretty much do that as well. The capabilities will remain same as it is. And yeah, again, we are using a hash map here to map the keys with the functions. And here we are trying to verify whether if the accept button on the screen, right, on a particular screen. So this is what I'm trying to validate here, whether if I'm getting the screen as expected. So I can execute the script as well and see how it functions. And the second word which we are trying to say is book of flight. So on a second screen, we are trying to fetch the word book of flight, correct? So I can pretty much see that as well. Maybe I can do some changes here. Maybe I can make it to made some correction here. I mean, intentionally I'm adding some issues here so that if the OCR tries to identify it, right? So these are the APIs that you would be using it on your local scripts, correct? So let me see if this device is available. Google Pixel 2. I can simply execute it. The execution will get started. I can validate by going into the devices section in the my active session if the device is getting booked. Yeah, I see the device is getting booked here. I can further go into the live view. Yeah, now I can start comparing and see if the application is, if the OCR is trying to identify the text that is required. Yeah. So on the first screen, as I said, it is trying to find whether the accept button has come here. And on the second screen, I intentionally made a mistake, book of flight, right? Instead of book of flight, I just gave it as okay. Instead of flight, I gave it an okay text, right? And as you see, it has come it as false. All right. Okay, pretty much done. So now if I try to compare here, the results, I'm pretty much printing it on my console here. So the first test was to capture the accept button. So the accept button stayed as it is, right? Um, yeah, and hence it is true here. And in the second screen, I intentionally made a error here. Instead of light, I made it as an okay. And hence you could see there is a false here. Then moving on, rest of the things I did not do any chassis changes, and thereby all the other scenarios have passed. And these are also in case if you wish to see the the screens, you can pretty much get it on these different locations. Okay, so that's how you compare how you verify the text. And also get all text. This is something in order if you want to see what are all the text that is appearing on the screen. If you want to capture the entire screen, you can pretty much get it as well. You just have to add the same connector and authentication details. And this is a hash map again. It's a Java function which we are using. All right, and this is the element. We are using XPath to identify the particular element, and we are printing every screen, correct? And also we are passing the API here, correct? Which will help me give all the text which is present on a specific screen, right? So this will help me understand, validate if there are any issues with the text. If any text that is missing, I can pretty much print that as well. So this can also be done. I can execute it and see it in real time. So let me see if Google Pixel 2 is available. Yeah, I have Google Pixel 2, Android 11. I can simply execute it. Let me see. Has come on the Yeah, the device has been booked. I'll go to the live view just to ensure the application is getting installed and all the scenarios are executed. Yeah. Now the driver will get initialized. Once it is initialized, the other rest of part of the test cases will continue. Yeah, it will fetch all the information that is on the screen here. You see here, accept, refuse, right, and it got printed. Yeah, good enough. It got executed very fast. Yeah, as you can see, all the text that is appearing on the screen, right? On the first screen, we had just two buttons there. One was accept and refuse. And then on the next screen, all the text which was part of the screen. And we are pretty much capturing that with the help of these APIs. And printing them on my consoles, and this will help me understand if there is any word or if there is any text which is missing or additionally added, so I can quickly run the script and try and understand. So this is pretty much possible. And the last one is the coordinates, right? So if you are trying to understand the coordinates, if you want to understand what are the different coordinates for a particular test, similarly you can create this one, and I have created the script and again added few scenarios which will help me understand. Yeah, again on the accept button, if I'm trying to get the coordinates of this accept button with the help of this API, coordinate API, so this will give me the left the coordinates, all right, at which particular point the accept button is placed. So we have written a formula here. So Java functions, you can pretty much add it your own way and get this. If I try to execute this, I'll get all the relevant information. So there are two such scenarios which we have added here. All right. So yeah. So you can pretty much make use of all various different feature mechanisms that you want to run through, be it the image comparison or even verifying the text, all getting all the text along with the coordinates. You can very well use. We have detailed documentation in place, which we have published on pcloudy documentation, which you can follow. And yeah, so that's pretty much on the visual AI segment side. I hope this session was informative and useful. In case if you guys have any queries, we are open to Q&A. Let me see if there are any queries. Okay, let's get started with the Q&A. There are a few questions which are coming all the way. Let's try to answer them. Okay, let me take a question here from the user Imran, who says, when can we start the visual testing? Which testing phase? All right, a very good question. So you can run the visual test at any point of your application, right, with your visual UI. So most developers, they try to run during the visual test individually on their components while they are developing it, right? And from the functioning application side, it could be during the end-to-end test as well. So there is no specific point or phase where you need to start. Once the UI is developed, it starts from the developers. Even the developer does the testing. UI they can add within their codes, like I showed, or even after the end-to-end test is done, you can involve that during any part of the test, right? So yeah, hope I have answered your question, Ra. Okay, there's one more question from user Ajay. He says, how can we compare two different images? All right, I two different images on two different devices. Okay, very good question again. So if you want to test the comparison on two different images, right? So this is pretty much possible. So when you're executing your tests through the framework, right? You could what you can probably do is do the parameterization for two different devices so that you launch both the devices at the same time. So you define the devices on which devices you want to run. So you make sure, as I showed, make sure you capture the base images of your existing application and place it in the base image folder, so that when you try to run your new build, okay, new build, so this tries to spot the differences with your base images, and this will give you a differential image on a different folder. I hope you would have seen that. Yeah, of course I showed it on a single device, but of course you can map it for multiple devices as well at the same time. And thereby that helps you understand how you can spot the differences with your previous builds, right? So yeah, this is possible. I hope I have answered your query, Ajay. Thanks. Okay, so there is another question from the user who says, how is the baseline image captured manually, or is there any record and capture option? No, currently, this has been done manually, right? So you have to have the baseline image manually. So if you would have run your previous builds execution, you tend to capture the screenshots of every screen, right? You need not do it manually. Even you can run the script of your existing build, capture the screenshots, and place them in the base image folder, right? You don't have to necessarily do it manually. You can run through script and capture them, and then once the new build is available, you just change the application details with a new build and just try to compare it with the base image, right? Of course there is a little manual effort, but you can automate that as well, so that you identify the differences in real time. Yeah, I hope I answered your query. That was from Rajini Balakrishnan. Yeah, thanks for your query. And you also have a follow-up question, I believe. Do we need to capture the different base images based on different device sizes, screens, and page orientation? Yes, you are right. You have to capture the base images. See, the prerequisite here is, as I mentioned, you need to capture it, correct? So need not necessarily be captured for different devices or different screen sizes. So in order to understand, so for example, you have a use case on a specific device, right? You run a script, you do your execution, and then you capture the images for every screen, right? And you consider them as a base image, and then you can place those base images in your base image folder. Now what happens is, when you are trying it to run it on a different device altogether, right? Say for example, first you run it on a Samsung device and you consider them as a base image, and then you placed it in the base image folder. Now when you are running it on a OnePlus device, you actually you will get to see the differences, real-time differences, right? And thereby understanding what's the difference when I'm executing on Samsung and what is the difference when I'm executing on the OnePlus. So what it does is, when you're executing with OnePlus device with the same application, this will give you the differential image altogether. It will try to compare and see if there is any difference at all. If there is no difference, it will still print the image, whatever it's getting. If not, there won't be. But however, you need not separately capture the base images for a different screen sizes or a different devices. You could run it and see it if there is any difference at all. So that helps you. The intent here is to help you spot the difference when you are running the same build or a different build on a different devices and see the spot the differences. Okay. Hope I have answered your question, Rajni Balakrishnan. Okay, there is one more question. So from Roshan, he says visual testing are non-judgmental. Could you please brief once? Hey, thanks for your question, Roshan. Yeah, so as I said, see, when we talk about judgmenting or non-judgmental, so this is something, see, when we talk about functional testing behavior, here we are pretty much judging based on the functionality of that particular use case, right? Whether if it's passing at that particular point, whether if you're able to achieve that scenario, right? And you are purely judging based on the facts there, based on the behavior of the application. For example, if you're trying to log in, right, log into application with your credentials, and you see with the proper username and the password you are able to log in or not. So you are just testing the functionality here, whether if you are able to log in. So that's judgmental, correct? You very well you make it whether if that scenario passed or not. But whereas in case of visual testing, this is something where you cannot really judge based on the behavior of the software or behavior of the application. It is based on visual elements that is being on the screen, correct? You tend to spot the differences. Of course, you could do it manually, but it takes a lot of time in consuming. So when you're executing, when you're implementing it through the automation scripts, so that's where the benefit of AI comes in and the automation, right? And this will quickly highlight the issue, the visual bugs that will try to compare it with the other image and just give you a different image altogether with the highlighted. So hence we call this as a not judgmental. We are not judging based on the behavior, but on the visual appearance on the UI screen, right? Yeah, I hope I've answered your question, Roshan. Thank you. Yeah, again, there is a question. Can the same script be tested against different devices parallelly? Again, it's the same question from Rajini. I think I tried answering this to one of the user named Ajay. But yeah, I'll try to answer. Yes, the same script can be tested on a different devices parallelly at the same time. You can parameterize with the different number of devices based on the number of licenses that you have. You can just execute it. So, but you have to make sure that those devices are available. Right, so it can be 2 different devices, 3 different devices. Theoretically, there is no limit as such. Right, you can execute on n number of devices. So that is also possible. I hope I have answered your question. Well then, spot on. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your queries. Very interesting session it was, I believe, and I hope this session was very informative. So in case if you guys have any queries, feel free to reach us out. Uh, uh, we are there to happy to help you with any use cases. With that, I conclude. And once again, thank you so much. We look forward to work with you all and collaborate. Thanks again. Have a good day.